Continuing hurricane coverage on my radar.
Hey, good evening, everybody. I'm Meteorologist Stefanie Lauber. I'm here to bring you the update for our 11 p.m. from the National Hurricane Center, where we are now looking at a Category 3 Hurricane Dorian. So not much of a surprise. We were already on that threshold between Cat 2 and Cat 3. So with that, getting to 115 miles per hour, which is where we are now, is not all that surprising. It's 5 miles per hour. But with that, let's get you to the latest on that map. So Cat 3, we're hanging off the coast of the Georgia-South Carolina border, and as we continue to move into your Thursday and Friday, we do expect this to continue riding up the coast with the possibility of a landfall somewhere either in South Carolina or North Carolina. As Dorian approaches, it's going to be a close call here, and the core of the storm skims the coast there. So something we definitely need to keep our eyes on, but it will continue to fluctuate in intensity, wobbles here and there, but this will be on a downward trend going into the next couple of days. Really, Thursday will be the day that it makes the most progress moving along the eastern seaboard there and out to sea by about Friday on the official forecast track from the NHC. And it will lose intensity as it heads on into Friday and moves out of our hair. I know we are all very, very ready for that to happen because Dorian's been sticking around a little too long and overstayed its welcome, particularly with the damage that it's done and the devastation it's caused for our friends down in the Bahamas. Just some really sad stuff out there. But for us, we've really been very fortunate with this, particularly in Florida. You know, it's moving away from the Florida Peninsula here, and we've done very well as the storm has moved through. Really haven't seen too much of an impact because the first steering current, the Bermuda High, brought it close to us, but the second steering current to come in has really saved us from seeing too much of an impact from this storm, and it's actually helping us out here. Notice the feeder bands from Dorian, there's nothing wrong with this radar. They're not moving very far inland at all because we have that trough block of sorts and not letting the storm do its thing. And the center of Dorian is about 70, 75 miles off the coast of Georgia there. And so at this point, as of the 11 o'clock advisory, hurricane force winds extend out 60 miles from the center. So not from the eye wall there, but from the center of the eye. 60 miles out, we're seeing hurricane force winds. Those Cat 3 winds really isolated to that batch of storms you see there on the left side of the eye, and that extreme concentrated eye wall is where we're seeing those Cat 3 force winds with Dorian. As you head further out, we're going with Cat 1 on the outer fringe of the 60 miles, and tropical storm force winds expand out 125 miles. So the wind field on this storm, it started out as a very compact storm and has since expanded as it's come closer to the United States. And again, that's been something that's been very helpful for us. But I pointed out these feeder bands, it's almost as if there's a boundary along I-95, not letting them get much farther than that. So let's take a look at our front that's been helping us out here. It's this upper level trough. I'll show you on water vapor here. The area you see in orange there, this is looking at the top, from the top down in the atmosphere. We are looking above the atmosphere, looking down. Water vapor, this is 300 millibars. So we are staring down at the water in the atmosphere, that orange being the absence of which, and that's the dry air eroding away at the western side of Dorian. You'll notice the blues are more towards the east side of the storm. This thing is having a hard time on account of that trough, but the warm waters of the Gulf Stream have sustained this tropical system, and we've been talking about this here at My Radar. This is probably the most resilient hurricane that we have seen in our time because it has just beat all the odds and really overcome any of the obstacles thrown its way. So very interesting storm for the record books that will be studied from here on out. But the good news is it's going to be out. It's going to be out of our hair very soon. I know we are all tired of this and not nearly at the level of destruction that we have seen the storm do on its way through the Caribbean. But For the rain that's accumulated over the past 48 hours across Florida, much of that has been over the ocean. We have been so fortunate, thanks to that trough, that rainfall totals over the Florida Peninsula have only peaked at about maybe 5 inches in that area of red north of Daytona Beach. And that's a pretty rural area there, Bunnell, Palatka. So really very fortunate that we've only got about 1 to 3 inches of rain across the state there. And this is even going for South Florida, where our coastline took a battering from the ocean and the surf there, storm surge. But in terms of heavy rainfall, we were worried about that because we've had a nor'easter moving through, winds predominantly out of the northeast, putting some strain on our creeks and rivers, particularly in north and north central Florida. So with the tides, where we are in the lunar phase, and this hurricane coming through with storm surge, it's just been a mix of higher storm surge impacts and coastal flooding concerns as well with the storm. So the good news is we've seen most of that offshore. That'll continue to be the case into tonight, but South Carolina and North Carolina, you are looking at the potential for more rainfall, heavier than what we've seen in Florida, very likely going into your Thursday and Friday. We have those totals for you as to what to expect going into the next 2 days. Here it is. By Wednesday, we start to pick up a little bit of rain in the low country of South Carolina. Thursday, by afternoon hours, early evening, we probably got about 5.5 inches of rain in Myrtle Beach, where if you go further inland, just up the highway to Columbia, you barely have 1/2 inch of rain. So a lot of that really isolated to the coastline there. And going into the rest of Thursday and Friday, that picks up on the outer banks of North Carolina by Wilmington, Cherry Point, and Jacksonville area, getting about 4 inches of rain before it's all said and done and the system moves out overseas. So the good news is the storm will be moving through very quickly. The unfortunate news is that these parts of the Carolinas are more susceptible to coastal flooding and storm surge risks. And for that reason, we have storm surge warning that extends from the mouth of the St. Mary's River in Georgia that extends all the way up to Pocosin, Virginia, because as the storm moves through, it's just with those winds pounding the ocean and really pushing a lot of water towards the coast here. So with that, those are the main risks that we're concerned about. And I've got to remind you, please do not go out seeing. It may seem pretty tame for inland parts, and then you get out to the coast because you want to catch a glimpse of what's going on, and it's really not safe. Here in Jacksonville today, we had a number of people who had to be rescued by lifeguards for being out on the beach. We've had curfews for the night hours, so people couldn't be out on the beach, but during the day, people wanted to go sightsee, and one woman was on the coast just watching the waves. Tide came in, knocked her off her feet, and dragged her into the ocean. She had to be saved by lifeguards there. So here's a look at some of that rough surf we've had in Florida, beginning with the Jacksonville Beach Pier. You can see those waves pummeling the sand there and up by the pier. Matthew took out that pier very recently. So again, a lot of people here in North Florida feeling very grateful that we didn't see some of those repeat effects with this storm as it passed by. So very fortunate news there. But South Carolina, North Carolina, you're going to want to keep an eye on the storm as we go on through, because it is mighty and it is still holding on to its strength despite the odds, and it will be weakening as it moves out. But storm surge, really the main risk here. Not a joke, not something to take lightly. So please, I don't want you to be concerned. I don't want you to be worried, but please heed the warnings that are put out by your local officials. If you are in an evacuation zone, consider evacuating to higher ground, because those advisories are issued for a reason. If your home, know your individual risk. If your home is in a flood-prone area, you're going to want to take preparations for that ahead of time, and you're going to want to do it quickly because this storm is picking up speed and it's moving out to sea. So at the very best, this storm will be out of our hair quickly, and that will help minimize some of the impacts. But it doesn't mean that we are out of the woods yet. We're going to keep our eyes on Dorian until it is gone. But yes, I can't say that enough. Please do not go out sightseeing. Do not leave your home until it's safe to do so. You don't want to go venturing around and causing more problems for authorities out there taking care of the situation. Infrared imagery shows how Dorian has been hanging on. Something interesting that we've noted is over the past 24 hours, the center of the storm, the eye and the eye wall, has been riding along the warm Gulf Stream that wraps around from the Gulf of Mexico up the eastern seaboard. Now, last night, it was more of the western eye wall that was over the Gulf Stream there. And as you start breaking up into that bend between Florida and Georgia and jutting out towards the Carolinas. The Gulf Stream angles out a little further away from the coastline. So today, more of the eastern eye wall has been over those warmer waters. But as the Gulf Stream moves further out to sea and Dorian moves closer to the coastline, we can see a bit of a drop off in that intensity. But those very intense convective cells within the hurricane are denoted there by those darker shades of the maroon looking colors. But still a healthy storm holding its own despite the odds. And like I said, this is going to be one that we study as we go into the next couple of years as to how it beat all the odds with everything against it in the Caribbean and whatnot. Okay, what can you expect for wind speeds if you are in the area going into your Thursday? We're still going to feel breezy conditions into Florida. I was just reading with the latest advisory. All advisories have been canceled for Florida, but that doesn't mean we're going to forget that Dorian's nearby. So breezy conditions still expected, 24-mile-an-hour winds in Daytona Beach, 26 here in Jacksonville. Still pretty gusty for your Thursday. As you get closer to where Dorian is, 53-mile-an-hour winds in Savannah. And moving on further up the coast, that's where we see more of this action taking in. Hurricane force in Charleston for a bit, a short-lived while there. As it goes up to Wilmington, we begin to see some of the closer to Cat 1 winds there going into Friday. And like I said, I cannot stress it enough. This storm will be moving very quickly out of the way. So stay home, enjoy your time off, and just take the day to relax. Wait the storm out, let it pass, let it do its thing. We are almost done with Dorian, guys. I promise you. We may see a quick landfall from this storm somewhere in the Carolinas, probably near the border, and then it'll be out of our hair, it'll be done, and then we can get ourselves re-prepared for any other storms that happen throughout the season. But watches and warnings that are in effect, that area up in yellow for Virginia and southern parts of Delaware, Maryland, Chesapeake Bay area. Under a tropical storm watch, that's because you could see some of the fringe effects as Dorian passes by, depending on how close it gets to the coast as it moves out to sea, could catch some of the fringe effects there. Hurricane watch is in effect for the outer banks of North Carolina from about, I believe that's Jacksonville, North Carolina, moving up into the outer banks. Hurricane watch in effect. Tropical storm warning still in effect for the Georgia coastline. And as the latest advisory, Florida is no longer under any other advisories. But yeah, the hurricane watch extends from the mouth of the St. Mary's River to the Savannah River. Hurricane warning is in effect north of the Savannah River to the North Carolina-Virginia border. So, of course, we need to keep our eyes on that going into tomorrow. Approaches very quickly, we'll likely see some flux in those warning areas. Okay, for the storm surge in Florida, likely to still see some impacts from that, but really we're focusing on the impacts going into the Carolinas. Let me back that up there for you. Going back to our storm surge graphic here. Okay, here we are. So moving further north, those areas in yellow, that's where we have the greater risk, where you could see about 3 feet in some places of the orange and yellows you see there, 6 feet, isolated place by Georgetown, South Carolina, where you could see up to 9 feet. But what we've seen in the advisories, they're expecting the greatest impact of storm surge of maybe 5 to 8 feet. That is expected to be around the area from Isle of Palms to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Savannah River to the Isle of Palms, about 4 to 7 feet. And Myrtle Beach to Cape Lookout, 4 to 7 feet of storm surge. And Duck, North Carolina to Poquoson, Virginia, which includes Hampton Roads, could see anywhere from 2 to 4 feet of storm surge as we head into the next couple of days. And then that's it, folks. Dorian will be out and gone, and we can get on with the rest of our week here. Looking at the tropical climatology, though, we're just getting ramped up here. Peak of hurricane season is officially September 10th, according to our climatology. This is records going back several years. So that's when we expect to see it. We are right on schedule in the rising action here on this curve. And then we see the peak in September. We see another uptick in activity, a peak in the middle of October. So we are far from done here, just getting started. Alone this week, we've had 3 named storms in the Atlantic. We've had Dorian, which we all know very well and we are sick of, quite frankly. We had Tropical Storm Fernan that made landfall in Mexico, and that was actually pretty beneficial. It was a weaker storm, but it brought much needed rainfall to South Texas. So very grateful for that there. And then, of course, Tropical Storm Gabrielle out in the middle of the Atlantic, not going to impact anyone. So, of course, we're keeping our eyes on it. But right now, all signs point to say that that is not a concern for us. We'll continue to watch the tracks for you here on My Radar and keep you up to date on what is going on, so you don't have to worry as you go on through the rest of the season. We got it covered for you. We have a great team of meteorologists here to keep you up to date on what is going on. So as we head into tomorrow, continue to keep up to date with us. We're going to be updating you guys at every advisory. That'll be here. It'll be in our My Radar app, Facebook, wherever you can find us. That's where we'll be providing these updates for everybody. So thank you for joining us tonight. Again, I'm Meteorologist Stefanie Lauber. Our Chief Meteorologist Leslie Hudson will be keeping you up to date throughout the rest of your Thursday, of course, with our other meteorologist, Mike Linden. So I hope everyone here has a great evening, and thanks for joining us. Good night.
Continuing hurricane coverage on My Radar.